Hello and welcome to Vocal Medicine. Today I'd like to talk about a book that I recently read called Yoga Vasistha. So this is a book, I'm going to look at my paper here to make sure I get all these names correctly, written by the sage Valmiki, and it's the story of Sri Rama, so Prince Ram or Rama, who is asking questions from the sage Vasistha. And he answers questions all about life and death, and there's all kinds of parables and stories and queens and kings and, amazing tales. And the one thing that really struck me was something that he called the 4 soldiers. And these were the 4 soldiers that are to guard the road to liberation. The idea is that you need to make friends with at least one of these soldiers, and that will gain you access to the other soldiers and ultimately to the road for liberation. So those soldiers are inquiry, contentment, association with the wise, and patience. So I just thought I would talk for a few minutes about my experience with these different qualities, and you might get interested in reading this book yourself. So it's available on Amazon. It was translated. It predated the Ramayana in terms of when it was written historically, and the one that I read was just translated in the last 5 years, I think. So at any rate, there's probably earlier versions. So the idea is that for me, inquiry is easy. If you're someone who's on a spiritual path, you probably have been inquiring about life since you were a little kid. I remember when I was about kindergarten age, first grade or so, I asked my mom so many questions that she finally bought me an encyclopedia that was called Tell Me Why, because I was asking her, why about this, science and weather and just whatever. So that one I think is probably almost a given if you're on a spiritual path. And then as you get older and you have more maturity, that turns into self-inquiry and inquiry into the deeper things in life, like what is the universe, who am I, why am I here, that kind of thing. So that's one of the 4 soldiers. The next one is contentment, which I think is probably closely related to patience. And that's the idea that if you are always discontented with your life, with your relationships, with your work, with whatever it is, that it's hard to make spiritual progress. So maybe it goes along with gratitude, recognizing that yes, there are always problems because it seems to be the human condition. If there are humans in any particular situation, there's probably going to be some kind of annoyance, some kind of something that's going on. So contentment, recognizing the things that are eternal and the things that are passing, and being able to step back enough to be content in the progress that you're making on the path, whether you're chanting or you're doing mantras, that is chanting, whether you're chanting or you're doing meditation or yoga or study, whatever is your path. So contentment. Then the next one, association with the wise. That one I find to be a bit of a conundrum because associating with the wise obviously can help move you forward on your spiritual path. You can learn from them. They can recommend books for you to read or recommend practices to try. And just having companionship of one form or another on a spiritual path, not feeling isolated, can be a huge, huge boon. So having a spiritual community. So in Buddhism, they call that the Sangha. So, having a group of people who share your interest. So that I think is very important. However, it can also work even if you don't have that. Say you're surrounded by people who are exemplifying the things that you are trying to work on in yourself, whether it is discontent or annoyance or anger or impatience or whatever. So if you are consciously watching what's happening in the world around you, you can also use that to accelerate your own path, to recognize, okay, I can see that this person got annoyed with this person, and I want to be careful that I master that and that I react with compassion, with helpfulness. One time I was working in a commercial kitchen, and there was a woman there who was in charge of the bakery. So there was another woman who was working there. I was just there for the summer. It was like a summer job. And the one woman kept forgetting what what do we call it? The baking master, whoever is in charge. So kept forgetting what she had been told to do. And she recognized that, and so she had to keep going back and asking. And one time she said, I'm sorry, I have to ask you again, but how much butter did I need in that recipe? So the woman who was running the bakery said back to her, I don't mind if you ask me 100 times. And it was so sincere and so kind that it literally chokes me up. I mean, it was like, my God, we have like a saint here in the bakery. So at any rate, there's example of association with the wise, people who are like that, who are just amazing, and the people who aren't, and you can learn from both. So the last one, the patience, I think that soldier is the one that for me is the most important. That is probably the one thing that I was criticized for even as a little kid. Like I would be impatient with the other kids, if they didn't learn something quickly or whatever. And so I think that has probably been, you probably have to befriend the soldier that you have the most challenges with. So I think that's the one that through life, and especially having children, is probably a reason why I had to have 5 children, not just 1 or 2 or 3, but 5 children to really learn that lesson. The patience that you have to have, with a toddler, with a young child, with a baby, with an infant, whatever, that you cannot lose your patience because it damages your relationship with them. I was making cookies with my daughter one time, and she was just having a good time, and she was just a little kid, and it was taking us forever to make these cookies. And finally, my impatience got the best of me, and I said, "Honey, can you just put the butter in?" And she started to cry, and that probably taught me the lesson of patience more than 1,000 books. So I've really learned that. And eventually I also learned that what I learned through my children was applicable to adults, because basically we're all just children inside. And so if I could start to look at everyone as though they were a little child and have that level of patience, then maybe I could have a level of self-mastery that would at least allow me to approach that soldier. So the idea is that there's these 4 soldiers, and you're choosing one of them to befriend, one of them to approach, one of them to claim in some way that you have a resonance with them. And if you befriend one of the soldiers, then the idea is that soldier will talk to the other ones and will say, okay, we should let her on the road to liberation. So that's just like the beginning. Like you're just getting onto the road to liberation, and then all of the steps and the journey down that road. So at any rate, those are the 4 soldiers. So inquiry, contentment, association with the wise, and patience. And you can choose which one you think you've got a good momentum on and you've got a good chance at, or which one that you need the most, that you want to work on. But I just loved that metaphor, and it just keeps those things in mind for me. So I hope you like that story. I will put a link in the description if you'd like to read that book. I don't have an affiliate at this point, so I'm not earning anything. It's just if that's something that would be helpful for you. Thank you for listening, and have a beautiful day.